Welcome to Back Talk Live. I'm Tom Hardegree. You knew that. We're going to have a good show tonight. Got all kind of stuff tonight. We had Mary McGarity on talking about the rendering plant that might be coming to Franklin Springs. A lot has happened, but Mary and JD, I know you have a last name, I don't know what it is, but JD, they're going to be on tonight. They're going to be talking about what has happened since then. It's pretty interesting, very interesting, or they wouldn't be here. So what we're going to do is hurry up. We're going to have a commercial. We're going to come back and get right at it. Hang on.
Want to know why it's hard to stop a train? It's how we've invented products that reinvented our world. It's how we test as hard as the elements do. It's how we run.
McGee Heating and Air. Comfort you can count on, people you can trust. And remember, it's hard to stop a train.
All right, welcome back to Back Talk Live. So we showed on this show, of course, your conversation. Then Wes and I went to the Franklin Springs City Council meeting and showed some clips from that meeting, so everybody's kind of up to speed on that. Now tell me what has happened since then.
Would you like for me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Thank you for having us back, Tom. A lot has happened, even in the span of just the last 2 or 3 days since the most recent Board of Commissioners meeting in Franklin County. The big thing that this past Tuesday's meeting was reliant on in reference to the rendering plan as well as wastewater treatment was a cancellation of what's called an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, between Franklin County and the city of Franklin Springs. Well, they were supposed to, we thought we were going into session to vote on that. The commissioners were going to vote on that. What happened is they added an item, it was 5B, and they went into executive session for about half an hour, and they came back out and informed everyone for right now, for this meeting, they were tabling it and would vote on it later with more knowledge and investigation.
Let me just ask this one question. There are only, I think, 4 different reasons you can go in executive session. What is it, Matt, back there? To talk about legal things, talk about real estate, talk about personnel, and one more, I think, maybe. What excuse did they use?
I think this is definitely like a legal issue, right? Because the agreement is between 2 entities, right? It's a contractual agreement between Franklin County and Franklin Springs. The IGA sets out a structure for shared services for wastewater management between those 2 entities. The way that the agreement's structured, we have a lot of concern. We also have a lot of concern with how the agreement came about. This was something that was deliberated for months and noted in the meeting minutes of the commissioners. A couple key points on the IGA that I think are important to understand. The introduction states that it's constructing a regional wastewater treatment facility, right? It also memorializes that the initial capacity is 2 million gallons per day, potentially expanded to 4 million gallons per day, right? So that sets the standard of like, hey, we're building a facility, but with the intent or potential to expand to 4 million gallons a day.
A regional water.
Right, and that's memorialized in the agreement. The other thing that's really interesting is Section 8. So Section 8 of the agreement says, future reservation of treatment capacity not guaranteed, right? So this agreement does not constitute a guarantee by the city of its continuing ability to provide sewage treatment capacity, right? The city does not intend to limit the county's use of available capacity as long as sufficient capacity is available. So what does that say? So we're committing to build this facility. You're committing as the county to help pay for it in terms of a customer, but we're not going to guarantee long-term potential service or use of that facility. So this is a 40-year agreement, right? This is something that binds future boards, this binds future generations really with an arrangement that now we have to manage potentially going forward. I think it's also important to recognize or point out some of the dynamics of how this came about. So if you look at the commissioner meeting minutes going back to late last year, October, November, there was a significant amount of deliberation about the way in which this wastewater treatment facility would be funded, right? And in the meeting minutes, some of the debate was noted from November all the way through February of this year that an industry was coming to Franklin Springs to help pay for the wastewater treatment facility, right? So that's in the meeting minutes, right? So what it seems like is Franklin Springs was telling the commissioners that there was an industry coming to help offset the cost of that infrastructure. So then the county would just support, the cost of operational, expenses for the wastewater treatment. Well, fast forward to this week, and last week, the mayor's been putting out statements of, hey, we actually never signed anything. There's no rendering plant coming. But the meeting minutes tell a different story, right? The history of not answering citizens' questions tell a different story in terms of what was actually happening behind the scenes. And so that's one of the things that we're actually really focused on now is, okay, this IGA, the way it's structured, we have concerns with. We think it exposes both the county and the city to regulatory issues. So I think it's a good opportunity to let's take a hard look at this agreement and see if there's something that we can do to make sure that we set up not only our generation, but future generations for a more sustainable future.
How much trouble would it be to amend the IGA?
Yeah, so I mean, the IGA, of course, like any contractual agreement, has severability provisions. And so there's certain, mechanics that would have to be worked through in any agreement that's been executed, right? So there is potentially an ability to amend it, but I think the nature of where it was and how it was negotiated, kind of the conditions, I don't know if we should cling to this agreement. I think it's an opportunity to have a transparent process going forward, one that involves all the stakeholders in our community, and keeping this agreement in place and maybe just amending it. While that might be a path forward, it just seems like the way that this came about and the lack of transparency that happened, it just seems like something that we want to take a hard look at and maybe develop a new framework for collaboration amongst the cities and the county. So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say, not relative possibly to this situation, but I know in construction, right, if you're going to make a contract and not everything's disclosed up front, all of the items are not, shared, then that is considered negotiated in bad faith. And so that is when you get into the legalese of the situation. And you say, as JD just did about the amendment, what we're trying to do here is set the precedent for history. This is so much more than an embattled city against a county. This has ramifications that goes for hundreds of years to their children, their grandchildren, all of our friends and family. So, amending it might be a possibility, but I think as JD shared, it would more work in our favor probably to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that works for everyone.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to repair the public trust, right?
Yes.
If we look at the history of what's happened over the past couple of months, citizens, hey, go to this meeting and ask the questions, and then they say, well, that's not our topic, go to this other meeting. So citizens have become very frustrated with the way that this has all gone on, right? Then we have volumes of documentation and emails that show that the city of Franklin Springs was trying to bring in an industry to help offset the cost. It just shows that, hey, this is an opportunity to clean the slate. If we can find a way, and I think it benefits both parties, to structure a new agreement that protects the development objectives of the county, right? Ensuring that development focuses on the I-85 corridor, that we're protecting environmentally sensitive areas, that bedroom and village communities development patterns align with the master plan, the 2024 joint development plan. So those are all aspects that I think this is a good opportunity to implement a potential new arrangement between the counties and the cities. The other thing I think that's important to note is, when we talk about the way that it proceeded, right? So my background is in corporate development. I do mergers and acquisitions. Typically, when you set up a greenfield facility, right? That's when you go into a community, you have a greenfield. You are proactive and you engage the community, particularly if it's a business or industry that is attractive, right? That has good wages, that has a good corporate track record, right? So these are things that the community can be proud about. The other strategy is you plan behind closed doors, you have, you rush through agreements, you sign things, and then you work on a blowback or a damage control plan, right? So it's kind of two different paths. And from my professional experience, looking at the way that this deal has proceeded and how these things have proceeded, I think it's the latter, just from all the evidence, in my personal opinion. So it's a good opportunity, right, for the community, for our commissioners to take a stand to do the right thing. I think it's a good opportunity for the stakeholder groups, like the ecological groups, the citizen advocacy groups, to come together, and that's really what the key message was this commissioner meeting. Wouldn't you say?
It was very much about unity, absolutely. And I want to, as a sidebar, this isn't a professional happenstance today, but I stopped to get lunch on my way to take care of my grandmother, and I ran into Madison County's chairman of the board, Todd Higdon, and I'd read his statement last time I was on here, and we spoke briefly, but he reiterated his support to not only Franklin County, but all counties involved. He also specifically let me know that Madam Chair Lady Long is doing everything in her power to help the people. You know, they're on the phone constantly. You know, this isn't their only, the board's not only dealing with this one situation, right? They've inherited pretty much a history that they're having to deal with. So he assured me that everyone is taking it just as seriously as we are. And that was comforting. You know, his statement last month was for the people and about the trust that has been lost. So I just wanted to share that because their support means a lot.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, I noticed at the meeting that the mayor was the only one speaking. The other council members never said a word. Is that something that, is that just the way that it works in Franklin Springs, is that they don't, you know, he does all the talking?
Yeah.
Or could they have said something if they wanted to?
You know, I think that brings up a really good point, right? So we had a lot of questions. They said, hey, come to that meeting on 4/15 and we'll answer your questions. 24 hours before, the rules were changed and said only Franklin Springs residents could come and ask questions, despite the fact that this industrial zoning and wastewater treatment plant actually more affects the county, right? And so that was a concern. But then when we get into the meeting, right, the legal counsel was right there. I think there was a lot of, you know, checking to make sure they're not stepping in any grounds that weren't favorable to their position, which at that point was silence. Flash forward 2 weeks, and now some statements start coming out, right? Hey, we're seems like the tone's changing, and the key messages and kind of theme of these press releases are, we've been saying this for months. Like, you know, Pilgrim's released a statement. They're not coming. Everything's fine. It's going to be a municipal plant. You know, and there's on the article that came out yesterday or today noted that there's going to be a park, and so all these things that they could have been discussed in that meeting when we had hundreds of people there asking for questions, right? So for me, it seems more like a coordinated PR campaign. Just from my corporate hat on, but I don't know. I mean, you were there. What did you think of the meeting?
Well, you know, I was sort of taken aback because I have 3 friends who speak very highly of the mayor. They told me that he's a good guy, and a couple of them said, boy, I hope he's not doing anything shady. And so I was kind of curious to see what he looked like and all that, and there he was, very defensive when people would ask a question, you know, and telling that one guy who's going to have him removed from the meeting because I guess he got too loud or something. But I was shocked that the council just sat there. One of them said something. He was gnawing on somebody in the audience, but none of them were answering questions or offering answers.
Right.
It was just the mayor. And I thought, well, maybe that's the way they have it set up here, is they're not allowed to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a great opportunity to answer the questions that everybody had, right? I mean, hey, what's happening? What's coming? Why was this IGA potentially, was this negotiating bad faith? Was there a misunderstanding? You know, all these questions could have been answered right there. Yeah. But it took 2 weeks, and it seems like the talking points, the statement's very polished. It thinks that the time to answer what it was there, right? But they chose to be silent and then wait for 2 weeks and start releasing press releases.
I thought it was kind of funny. This one lady stood up and mentioned something about the rendering plant. And the mayor said, do you see anything on the agenda about the rendering plant? And I'm sitting there thinking, you made the agenda. You know, why didn't you put something about what everybody's here for?
Right. Would have been a good opportunity to discuss it, or put it to bed, right? Instead of just avoiding it altogether. That creates mistrust.
Yeah.
Right. That feeds potential, a lot more concern in the community, because when our officials are being silent purposefully on topics that everybody wants to know about, what are you going to infer, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that was, I think the good thing about that meeting, again, actually the Board of Commissioner meeting the week before, I think it was on the 7th, huge turnout, right? The community came out, everyone, again, just wanting answers. Yeah. It was an amazing turnout. That kind of galvanized support. We had a lot of momentum going into that meeting on the 15th at Franklin Springs City Hall. What I think showed up there was some of the best of our community, right? People are upset because they have been run around in circles, but also too, it was civil, right? People came to ask questions. They didn't get what they wanted. And, with what's on the line here and what's at stake, potentially, concern about the Broad River, the ecosystem, our future as a county and community, that I think it was handled very well. I think the mayor's statement from the outset kind of set the tone for the meeting, right? He said that they were getting threats on social media, that there was, misinformation, but that was his opportunity to address the information, right? The misinformation. It took 2 weeks for some very well-crafted, potentially PR-driven communications to come out. So I think there's still a lot that we need to dig into as it relates to the IGA, as it relates to, what is the future development plan and the industries that Franklin Springs is trying to attract. Because we can talk about the economics, we can talk about some of these other pieces, but these are all things that in the mayor's statement recently today, he talked about, hey, we need jobs, basically summarizing, we need jobs for this county, right? We have 9,000 people that are leaving every day to commute to work. And we get that, right? And we do want development in our county, right? But we want smart development. We are primed for growth. The 85 corridor, that logistics hub, light manufacturing, it's just a matter of time and years before we are one contiguous intermodal and logistics hub all the way to Charlotte, basically. There's going to be infill. So why spoil the primest real estate in our county on the Broad River, Franklin Springs, and attract waste-producing industries, right? Yeah. Just doesn't make sense. And so we're hoping that we can continue to get folks aware, right? Get them involved, get them united on the mission that, hey, we can have a stake in our future. We can influence these development decisions. We can protect the Broad River, which is one of Georgia's last clean, free-flowing rivers.
Got a question. Does Franklin County or Franklin Springs council meetings have the ability to be televised locally like the Hart County Board of Commissioners meetings and the Hartwell City County meetings?
Yeah.
We actually have someone who's been filming them for the last couple of months, both Advance Franklin. They get posted on Advance Franklin, but also...
That's the Facebook page.
That's
Advance
the Facebook
Franklin
page.
County, yeah.
Excuse me, yes, Advance Franklin County Facebook. It also gets posted onto the official SaveBroadRiver.com website. And so there has been private videographing as well. So people are definitely paying attention. Mm-hmm. But yes, it is available on the Facebook page, Advanced Franklin, pretty much the evening after it occurs. They're very quick about
Yeah. So we have private folks that come and are dedicated to live streaming on Facebook Live, and then the county posts on Vimeo on their page. But it's typically several hours or maybe 12 hours delayed. So that real-time aspect. Audio's not the best on the Facebook side, but at least we have some mechanism to have some live broadcasting. Yeah.
And to know the narrative's not controlled, right, as well, if it's coming from there. Because just to harken back to what you had mentioned about, seemingly only having one spokesperson for a council of many, from what I can infer, the narrative of what's going on, and it's very much a narrative, right? It started out as rumors and hearsay, and then it was confirmed with factual documents. So when something like that happens, it becomes a narrative. And right now, the narrative is very much trying to be controlled, and I would probably damage control is a good way of putting it, I think. And as JD was sharing earlier about corporate America, and you're either going to come into the community and brag on the industry, or you're going to kind of have to come and explain, hey, we're bringing this in. And that is absolutely the meeting I sat in back in March with Turnip Seed Engineers and David Tyree, the engineer who came and spoke. It was almost like a sales pitch, I could liken it to, like this is going to be great for the area, you just don't understand why. It was that kind of energy given off to the audience. And
condescension.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I got to take a break. Do we have anything else to go over?
May I mention one thing?
Yes.
And if I may I address the citizens? Is
Sure.
that possible?
Yeah.
Okay, so up until now, we've been using brwa.org for memberships as well as donations. As of this past Wednesday, we have filed the Articles of Incorporation for an actual Save Broad River Legal Defense Fund. We have a board. We are going forth. We have an EIN. All of our donations are going to be earmarked to fight whatever is relative to Broad River legally, not only in this situation, but for our kids and grandchildren. So we're establishing it as a protective mechanism over the Broad River. A little more, it's not going to be focused on cleanup and stuff as much, but we are going to focus on legally protecting our most precious environmental asset around here. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Yeah, I would just say, this is a great opportunity for the community to come together to ensure that the development plans that are brought forth have transparency and accountability, and that we have a stake in the future of our communities and like she said, protecting our natural resources. And so that's a message that transcends political boundaries. That's something that resonates across not just our county or Hart, but the 7 counties downstream and really all the way down the Savannah River. So super.
It's just great to see you two and so many others that I've talked to that are so interested in stepping up and saving your community. It's really encouraging. I want to see y'all running for office too, by the way.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just us though. There have been hundreds of people to stand up and come out and want to help. So we're so grateful for that as well. And no matter if you fill a seat or you donate $10, everything is considered activism.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Matt Beasley.
Mm-hmm.